body's incredible spirit of giving. So our story begins back in 2001 with Bigwood's first effort to grow and expand our facilities. The elders at that time, and thankfully many of them are still with us today, considered several options. They looked at an addition to this current building. They looked at building on the Keller Road property, which we still own and plan to sell. They even considered, if you can believe, the South Hannah property, which is where we're building our current church. The elders and body embarked on an initial campaign in 2002 in support of a bigger, new facility, not knowing what God exactly had in mind. In that first campaign, Bigwoods raised $111,000. But God shut down all building options under consideration. The body continued to pray. Constant theme here, trusting in God's plan, God's timeline. And they continued to give to the building fund. Over a 15-year period, that initial $111,000 grew to more than $400,000. Praise God. It's for this reason that Bigwoods was able to purchase our new home on 241 South Hannah Street. Soon after Pastor Tim and Wendy arrived 7 years ago, the elders formed a Vision 2020 team and charged them with looking at building and financial options. Prayer led us back to the South Hannah Street property. However, the asking price was $1.4 million, which was way too high. We offered $500,000 and were at peace leaving it in his hands. We continued to pray, reminding ourselves God's plan, God's timeline. Prayer was answered 2 months later when the owners called back and accepted that original $500,000 offer. The agreement for sale was signed for the building and 5.6 acres in March of 2014. Soon thereafter, we purchased an additional adjacent 2.8 acres for $30,000, totaling 8.4 acres that we now own. As, or even more important that day, was seeing Pastor Tim witness to the owners of that company on this very stage, talking to them about what we do here. Clearly, God was at work. The only way an asking price starts at $1.4 million and ends up $500,000 is clearly through him. Praise God. After purchasing the property, Bigwoods paid off that loan in the very first year. At that time, we began to pray what was next. One Sunday morning in October of 2013, a young couple visited Bigwoods for the first time. Let's just say that their first visit to Bigwoods was less than perfect. We would later learn that after struggling to find parking, can you relate, they tried to enter Bigwoods at 3 of the 7 doors, and no one was available to guide or welcome them. Thankfully, they came back the next week. They met Pastor Tim and Wendy and went to lunch. The Varholics' first visit to Bigwoods led to 3 significant events. They started attending Bigwoods, praise God. They affirmed the need and became part of our greening ministry, championed by several other Bigwoods volunteers. And Gary Webster, Melissa's father, would later become our contractor. During lunch that day, Pastor Tim learned that Gary designed and built churches. And if you know Pastor Tim, when he hooks on to something or a skill set, he wants to follow up on that. And he did. In fact, Gary had developed architectural plans for a church in Orlando that split. These same plans were used to develop Bigwoods' architectural blueprint. The conversation with Gary was also a reminder to Bigwoods that our focus could never become just about a building. You remember our campaign tagline? It's not about a building, rather a tool to assist with our ministry, fellowship, and discipleship. With Gary as our contractor, we determined the original cost of our renovation would be approximately $2.4 million. We would need both a loan and another campaign. In 2014, Bigwoods launched its second campaign with a very, very, very aggressive goal of $1 million. We give praise that 3 years ago, we celebrated the successful conclusion of a $700,000 campaign. But in typical Bigwoods style, the body kept giving, and this past year, we surpassed that original $1 million goal. In addition, we give praise for 90% plus pledge fulfillment rates, that many have paid off their pledges early, and others have continued their pledge payment even though they've already paid off their pledge. At the same time we launched the campaign, we started looking for a loan. We were perhaps overconfident and approached 3 banks. We thought local banks would stand in line to lend us money. After all, we were a great financial risk. Well, all said no. Continued prayer. Enter Kyle Loesch. Kyle is a former LSU graduate and an employee of one of the banks who said no. Kyle, who knew our situation, was now working for Fulton Bank. He approached Pastor Tim and asked if we would consider giving Fulton an opportunity to submit a proposal. We said yes. In return, Fulton granted us a loan. On October 23rd of this past year, we had our groundbreaking at our new home, and on February 8th, we started construction. Praise God. While we were blessed to receive the loan from Fulton, it was less than we had requested, $2.25 million versus $2.4. That meant we would not be able to do everything we wanted, at least initially. More on this in a few minutes. Our financial support from Fulton was divided into 2 loans, a $725,000 bridge loan built against our pledges and property as collateral, and a $1.3 permanent 20-year loan. We are pleased to report that because of our successful campaign and the body's generation, we have yet to borrow $1. To date, we have paid $635,000. The balance on phase 1 is $125,000, yet we still have $76,000 in our building fund, and our current building is just about under contract for $185,000. On a side note, please continue to pray for a potential buyer for the Keller Road property. We may have some interest. As you can see, we are in good shape with phases 1 and 2. Phases 1, 2 being demolition and also the main sanctuary. However, we do have a challenge, which is also an opportunity. That's the optimistic side. Earlier I mentioned that we could not include everything we wanted in the building due to the reduced amount of the loan. In early July, my brother Scott Heckman updated the body on phase 3A. It is on display in the lobby. 3A includes offices, additional classrooms, closets, and the long-term home of our nursery. If you look at the slide on the screen, and Mitch will be kind enough to highlight a few things, you'll see 3A is the part going straight up. All right? That's the section we're talking about. To give you perspective, if you go down to where it says 3A, imagine yourself on the highway looking down at the property, and you'll see that front side. To the right is the sanctuary, to the left is the other parts. The cost of 3A, $558,546. As of today, 3A is not included in the project. Please be rest assured that we have contingency plans for the nursery and classrooms until they are complete. Here's the opportunity. With the generosity of our congregation and the ability not to have to borrow any money, the Vision 2020 team revisited Fulton Bank to discuss options for completing 3A now. In response to our discussions, we have 3 options, if it is God's will, to pursue for funding 3A in combination. Number 1, request a new appraisal. Option 2, reduce the cost of 3A. Option 3, seek additional campaign pledges. We are pursuing all 3. Let's talk about option 1, request for a new proposal. Our previous estimate only valued the property at $260,000 at the end of phase 1. We all thought that was very low. These appraised values affected the amount we could borrow due to what the banking world calls loan-to-value restrictions. So when we look at it, it's not the bank saying, Big Woods, you can't handle this loan. They just have to answer to the government regulation-wise, and formulaically it has to work on their numbers. That appraisal that we requested is underway. If higher, it gives us the opportunity to borrow against the bridge loan funds we did not draw down. Here's the praise. Because of our successful fundraising, even before we receive a new appraisal, Fulton is willing to let us use $300,000 of the bridge loan for 3A. Please know that there will not be any additional loans taken out. Rather, we would use a portion of the bridge loan that was intended for phase 1. We can do this because Big Woods has given above expected, allowing us to fund phase 1 through cash, not the loan. So as we wait for the appraisal and discuss all 3 options, With that $300,000, we are $258,000 shy of the $558 needed to complete 3A. That's option 1. Let's go to option 2. Reduce the cost of 3A. Our contractor, Gary Webster, has identified up to $40,000, possibly more, of work that could be completed by our outstanding volunteers and would be subtracted from the cost. Examples would include drywall, spackling, painting, wiring, and hanging sheetrock, none of which I can do. That work would take place in December/January at Gary's call. By the way, it is appropriate to give thanks to our incredible skilled labor in this church. The demolition and outside work, which has been our focus, is simply outstanding. Also, we have additional work to clear the brush between the highway and the building, improving visibility. And Scott Heckman will have more information on that soon. So kudos, thank you to all of the volunteers for your great work. More coming. Also, thank you for your patience, as we have to always line up within the contractor's schedule. That was option 2. Now I'm going to move to option 3. Since we started our campaign, more than 38 families have joined Big Woods. Many others attend regularly. If through prayer you would like to take part and are willing to document a pledge, that would be very, very helpful. In addition, for those who have already generously made a pledge, if it is on your heart to extend that pledge 1, 2, up to 3 years, and you are willing to document with your signature, that will also count. It is important to note that we know many of you already give outright to the building fund. Unfortunately, banks will only count contributions if they are documented via a pledge. As you leave today, the Elders and Vision 2020 team will have a pledge card available for your consideration. Please feel free to return all pledge cards to the office, either through the mail and or personal delivery and or to Josh or myself. One last request. If you decide to make a pledge, thank you. Please consider doing this in addition to your generous and much-needed current and annual support of ministries and staff. If you go back to several presentations, we had 3 pillars: ministry, staff, facilities, all critical. In summary, if we are meant to fund 3A now, it will be through a combination of options 1, 2, and 3. Please continue to pray for a favorable appraisal, for the working hands of our volunteers, and additional pledges. Ultimately, we know God will decide if we are meant to complete 3A now. As for the status of the project, Gary has given us a completion date of March 31st. If all goes well, that means we would be celebrating Easter in our new home. As you can see in the pictures, we are making progress. Interior major plumbing and stormwater drains were installed. Foundation footing pier work for the future entranceway was completed. Insulation with B decking was completed, and LED lighting was installed in the sanctuary. I have no idea what this means, but it sounds really good. B decking, yes. In telling the story today, it was such a great reminder to me personally that when you trust in God, in His plan, and His timeline, amazing things happen. It was also a quick reminder for me to get back to work doing what God has called us to do. If you have any questions, elders, pastors, Vision 2020 team, we will do anything we can to assist. Please ask us, and I understand from Tim that possibly as we move forward and complete the month of prayer in September, we may have a question-answer session, because I can't believe as comprehensive as this, and I am so thankful for your patience. I'm sure you do have questions. Last thing, I'd like to thank my brothers on the Vision 2020 team, elders and pastors. Everybody poured into this presentation today to honor God.